you are seeing is an Emily Dickinson poetry generator, and it is using the first lines from 25 of her poems to show in random order, and then when you press the space bar, you have a random poem. Read sweet how others strove. Faith is a fine invention, safe in their alabaster chambers. Dare you see a soul at the white heat? August 12th, 2022. Undue significance a starving man attaches. Come slowly, Eden. Of all the souls that stand create, you cannot put a fire out, semicolon, 7:36 a.m. So what's going on here? Well, let's hit tab twice. So what we are looking at is thoughts that were recorded in FoxPro. This is a FoxPro application running in DOSBox, and this is the order in which they were recorded. So you see there's an A, B, C. So I went through a poetry book, and I picked the first line, and it's alphabetized. That's why there's Emily over here. So I picked the first line of each poem from the index, and there's no X or Z. Now, what is going on with when I type Emily and if I type Emily and then I hit return, so it's picking up everything linked to Emily. So all those notions are linked to Emily. But let's say I pick number 2, a bird came down to the walk. Let's just do, I hit escape, a bird, and hit tab, and then I hit enter. Well, that is only linked to Emily and the date and time. So that was entered at 7:36 a.m. because when I hit tab, I see all the different times when I was entering data. And if I hit Control O, you will see, okay, let me do it from Emily and bring it up. Okay, hit enter and then hit Control O, and I get a bug in FoxPro. All right, Mark, we got to fix this. Let's suspend. All right, do MX, and let's try that again. Emily, hit enter. Okay, let's do Control O from here. Now, this shows the order in which everything related to Emily was entered. And the time, so that time was kept with just the first record. Okay. But this shows how you could create bidirectional links. So let's do a test. Let's do like a shopping list. Shop. And now let's hit tab. So this is the current time. But let's think about what we have to shop for. How about some bananas, some apples, some cookies, some ice cream, and milk. All right, that's our healthy diet. Now, all these are linked. Now, what kind of apples do we want? Well, let's make apples the subject, and let's add things to link to apples, like Fuji, Honeycrisp, and let's get an iPhone. Okay, so now let's look at apples. And these are all the links to apples. So we want to get Honeycrisp apples, an iPhone, and Fuji apples. And apples are linked to our shopping trip. So let's look at shop again. So when we go shopping, we want bananas, cookies, ice cream, and apples and milk. But we didn't go down another level. But when we go to apples, we see, let's see, apple tab. Okay, so that's what you have to do. You have to, you could type apples, and then you see you want Fuji, iPhone, and Honeycrisp apples. All right, so let's say we're looking for iPhone. Whoops, we don't have an iPhone spelled that way, but we have iPhone, and it's linked to apples. So what we have here is a graph. And it's a FoxPro application that allows very rapid data entry and creating your own graph. So let's say you have something called stuff, and you want to add your iPhone to your stuff. You hit tab, and then you type IP, and that's not the one you want. You want iPhone, like that. Okay, so iPhone is in the list. Now I'm going to hit escape. Let's type iPhone, and it's linked to apples and stuff. So we just created a graph. We expanded that node. So this is really a free-form graph, and it is a mind map if you want it to be, or it could be anything else that you want it to be. It really is a work of art, because when you do like Emily and you hit enter, okay, we have Emily : is where all these were linked. So this is a work of art because it is just randomly presenting thoughts, and those thoughts could be 40 years old if you want. So there is a guy who has been using this for 38 years, since 1984, and he has over 1 million thoughts in it. This is like his second brain, and it's like every lecture he's attended, every conversation he's taken notes on, and he's taken notes on paper. And this, imagine this in the museum. Like, here's Emily Dickinson come alive again, and she just wrote a new poem. Have you got a brook in your little heart? A bird came down the walk. Come slowly, Eden, I asked no other thing. Each life converges to some center, because I could not stop for death. Undue significance a starving man attaches of all the souls that stand create. Wait till the majesty of death lay this laurel on the one. That is a new poem by Emily Dickinson, resurrected from the dead.
Emily Dickinson was born in 1830 in Amherst, Massachusetts. She lived throughout her life in her father's house. Near the end of her life, she rarely left her own room. Aside from a few mostly anonymous verses, she remained unpublished.
A projector shuffles through old photos.
When she died, her poems were discovered. Some of the strangest, most fascinating poems ever written. Almost 2,000 of them hidden in a maid's trunk.
The records of Emily Dickinson's life, up to and including Sue and Austin's marriage, are full and factual compared with what lies ahead. Over the next few years, just a handful of letters survive.
Projected slides show handwritten letters and poems.
The truth, perhaps, is hidden in her poems.
A scrap of paper reads, "To Sue." Different letters appear as the slides change. They shrink and fade into the background. In a cavernous room filled with printing presses and workers, a press's fly arm lowers a newspaper copy onto a stack of papers. At the other end of the machine, blank sheets are fed into a turning cylindrical wheel. In her room, Emily jots rapidly on a small sheet of paper. She dips her pen in an inkwell and folds the sheet in half. She writes on the folded page, "To Sue." At the print shop, a worker takes a stack of newspapers bearing the name Springfield Republican. Folded copies land in a cart and are carried away. Hands place a copy into a display crate in line with other journals. Lavinia picks up a copy and opens it to the matrimony section. In his office, Edward reads the newspaper while wearing small glasses. Sitting across the room, Austin conceals a grin from his father as he reads a satire comic. In her room, Emily drops shreds of paper labeled "To Sue" into a basket next to her desk. In the print shop, a press wheel turns. At her front door, Mrs. Dickinson receives a copy of the Springfield Republican with a smile. Reading at the table, she crumples the paper, squashes a bug with it, and shakes the paper open. Emily writes "To Sue" on more paper scraps and drops them in the basket. She hands the basket to the maid Maggie.
In the years of the Civil War, Emily Dickinson reached her greatest heights as a poet. She wrote furiously in those years, at a pace and intensity unmatched before or after, nearly a poem a day. Her work of this period has been called a great and classic descent into a personal inferno. Yet, due to her life of seclusion, Dickinson has not traditionally been considered a war poet. Most people do not think of Emily Dickinson as a voice with the power to speak for a nation.
Of a young Messiah. I see sinners in a church, I see sinners in a church. Sometimes I might be introvert, there's a war inside. I hear battle cries, mothers burying sons, young boys playing with guns. The devil's a liar, fulfill your wildest desires.
Alone, but not lonely. Your truth unveils with time. As you embark on a journey of what it takes to be a woman.
So, how do you resurrect a system written in the 1990s that used Fox Pro 2.6 for DOS? Well, search for the metadata on the Internet Archive. And when you see the search results, take a look at Programming Languages Suite, and you'll see CD-ROM images, and this actually has Fox Pro 2.6. So in here you get an ISO image. So you download programlanguaged.iso, and then you use it in Microsoft Virtual PC on that Windows 7 machine that you've saved, right? Now, this is not ready for prime time yet, but we're working with Jason Scott to get this to emulate in DOSBox on the Internet Archive, because right now you get this error, and even though there is enough disk space in that image. So, give us some time, but if you really want to play with it, you could download this zip file. And let's see, show all. So you could download this package.zip file, and inside it, it has an image that you can run in DOSBox locally. So it has the Fox Pro, and it has a directory called MX with the code. So that will, if you run the autoexec.bat, that will get you into the code. So if you look at autoexec.bat, it will change the directory to MX and it'll run Fox Pro. So what you're looking at is Microsoft Virtual PC 2007 running an XP virtual machine. Remember XP? With that nice blissful field of dreams? And now you've downloaded that ISO image for the CD, so now you can capture this Fox Pro, where is it? No. So now, remember you've downloaded this program language d.iso. Well, now you open that, and now it is mounting it into your CD drive on your virtual Windows XP box. So in any second, under my computer, it's going to auto-run that CD, or it will come up. Yeah, here's the CD, and you could open the CD and see what's on it. And look at that. Here's Fox Pro 2.6 for Windows and Fox Pro 2.6 for DOS. Okay, let's open that folder in this virtual machine running on a Windows 7 on an Intel Mac Mini. So this is what is in the FoxPro 2.06 directory. Now let's see how big it is. 6.4 meg. Well, we want to get it onto a DOS virtual machine, and unless you remember how to install a CD drive in DOS with whatever drivers it needs, I wound up creating floppy disk images. And how do you do that? Well, let's look at the C drive and upgrades. So here is FoxPro 2.6, and I created 6 floppy disk images by dividing up the contents of that 6 megabyte file system into manageable floppy disks. And then what I have to do is mount a floppy, a virtual floppy. So I have to capture from my VFD directory some FoxPro, and here's fox1.vfd. So after I created those, I go to my computer, and they're now in the A drive. And this is floppy number 1, which has the same files as we saw on the CD in that floppy directory. And you could also do a shared drive between the Windows 7 and the Virtual XP as well, which I needed to do for some file transfers. Okay, now let's look at a virtual machine called FoxPro DOS. And this is a DOS virtual machine. And then when I've already set it up so that when I hit spacebar, any key, it runs FoxPro. Now notice who this is registered to. This is from the Internet Archive. So now if I do MX, it doesn't exist, so I have to do a file open and find out where I stored that. And it is here. Okay, and let's see. Okay, open. Let's go to the project. So tab, 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 and open project. So first I had to get FoxPro installed by copying all those floppy disk images and then running the installer. And now I have a project and I have programs, and I can do MX from here, which does not exist. I have to do a set path to C:MX, and now do MX. And now I could type Emily, and I can see what's in here. Okay, so here is what I had to do to create all the steps I went through to resurrect FoxPro. Wow, this works. So here is a typical graph project, map coloring, where you have to figure out how to color a map, which is a graph. And this is a program in Pascal that was an honor project for my computer science class. And here is the output of the map coloring program. So this is a mythical graph, and how you would color a map using each heuristic. And then heuristic 2, 3, and 4. Here's the central United States, how you would color them. and the whole 48 United States. 105 links. Too complex to trace. Heuristic 2, too complex. Heuristic 3. It gets somewhere. And heuristic 4, too complex. Sorry, this heuristic has taken too long. I'd rather not waste my precious time with it. Oh, this computer AI. Oh, what a pain. Now here is an extra credit program that plays the game of life on an IBM PC. In Turbo Pascal using graphics. Alright, let's watch the code. In Pascal. What a beautiful language. The game of life. Okay, let's run it. And let's do penta. Dot life. Let's do it for 100 generations. And it's thinking. Okay, here's an honor project that plays music. Okay, let's load a song. It's an IBM PC. Where's the return key? And let's look at this program. Turbo Pascal graphics from a text file. If graph unit doesn't load correctly, change unit directory to A:, and recompile the program. We didn't have hard drives in those days. Floppy disks. At least they were 3.5-inch disks. But we used records in Pascal. Turtle graphics in Turbo Pascal. Move to, line relative arc, bass clef. There's no magic to this, just hours of sitting in front of a computer. That's what my teacher said. You're going to spend more time with your ass in front of a computer in this class than you've ever done before. interpreter to read the string, go character by character, figuring out what the user put in their string and what the graphics are. This is the interpret procedure. These are the commands that could be in the string of music. Drawing a measure. Playing a measure. Wipe out. Load file. Main menu. And your main line. And let's look at a music file. That is how you put music into an IBM PC in 1989. So if you've been following the Twitterverse, I want to be like Javier, so I'm eating the El Jefe salad with chicken guac lime vinaigrette and all these other beautiful ingredients. So I've created a new hashtag called RetroBrightMe, and here is the little bird tweeting. And if you go to RetroBrightMe, you will see that I'm going to be a great uncle thanks to these two lovebirds. That's my nephew Jeffrey and his wife. And Stella Artoris is giving us an ad. And here is Something Happy, a musical concert. Success is counted sweetest by those who near succeed. To comprehend a nectar requires sorest need. Not one of all the purple host who took the flag today can tell the definition so clear of victory as he defeated dying on whose forbidden ear the distant strains of triumph burst agonized and clear. Pain has an element of blank it cannot recollect where it began or if there were a day when it was not. I had no time to hate because the grave would hinder me, and life was not so ample I could finish enmity, nor had I time to love, but since some industry must be, the little toil of love I thought was large enough for me. I'm Melvin Rose of Texas, my friends all call me Tex. When I lived in old New Mexico, they used to call me Mex. When I lived in old Kentucky, they called me Old Kentuck. I was born in old Shamokin, which is what they call me, Melvin Rose.